Hello, everyone. We are jumping right into our next speaker. I hope you had a good break, enough time to get your caffeine, run to the bathroom, whatever you needed, and join us back here. We have a familiar face with us up next. Matt Drankowski actually spoke at last year's first ever Toptal Talent Global Conference. He is a DevOps architect from Poland. He has over 15 years of experience and is passionate about improving cloud-based systems resilience, reliability, and efficiency. Now, he's an AWS expert with a proven track record of delivering successful DevOps transformation for enterprise clients specifically. And with strong problem-solving skills and attention to detail, he has been excelling in optimizing cloud infrastructure for maximum performance and cost effectiveness. So please welcome Matthias to the stage for his session, Maximizing Development Efficiency with GitHub Copilot, Navigating the Future of an AI-Assisted Coding. Matthias, hello, welcome to the stage.
Hi. Thank you so much for this great introduction. Hi, everyone. Great to see you all here. Today, I'm going to present a mixture of slide deck and a demo to you. So first, let me start sharing my screen with the slide deck, and I will tell you a little bit more about myself. I'm cautious of time, so let's get straight to our presentation. So hi, everyone. My name is Matt Drankowski, but I go by Matt. It's just simpler. I'm from Poland, from a city named Łódź that is directly translated to boat. Interestingly, we don't have any rivers here. I work as a DevOps architect. My background is in software development. Throughout my career, I moved to infrastructure, and then I started working with DevOps methodology. I help clients of all sizes with DevOps adoption, including that soft part of DevOps as well. So we are trying to break out silos, build culture, but there's always that automation part, CI/CD, cloud adoption, containers. So there is a lot to it. And today I would like to share some my experience from adopting GitHub Copilot to a large Fortune 100 company. Just to set expectation clear, I'm not an AI expert. I am DevOps architect, but I was tasked with leading that adoption across a huge volume of developers. So I think some of the content I'm going to share you may find quite interesting. I just want to focus on showing that how GitHub Copilot can be beneficial and what GitHub Copilot doesn't really provide. Let me quickly move my chat window so I can see if you have any questions. And let's quickly go through our agenda for today. So I'm going to start by briefly explaining what GitHub Copilot is. So for those that have never used any AI assistance, hopefully that is going to be a good starting point. I'm going to talk about key features and capabilities, but I'm not really going to deep dive into this subject. And then I will move on to my experience of leading that adoption. So I'm going to talk about how we tried to measure the impact of GitHub Copilot. This is necessary to actually establish what impact new tools make in large companies in order to make sure that they can we can carry on using those across the enterprise. And then I'm going to share some interesting outcome that can hopefully help you understand what GitHub Copilot can provide and how it can be used to the best effect. Then I will move into a quick demo just to show some interesting capabilities. This is going to be a live demo because when every time you write down a prompt, it can yield different results. So I think hopefully that's going to be interesting. And finally, the last part is going to be I'm going to share some tips on how to integrate GitHub Copilot. So what GitHub Copilot is? The definition of GitHub Copilot is this is an AI-powered code development assistant. It was developed by GitHub in collaboration with OpenAI. The intention behind Copilot is to increase productivity of software developers and make sure that they can enjoy their work, they can reduce that repetitive task and focus on more strategical, big thinking. So that's the definition. That's a great goal. But what GitHub Copilot is not at the moment. So definitely it is not an up-to-date documentation. So GitHub Copilot model was trained on data up to September 2021. So it lags behind ChatGPT-4 and it lags behind industry. So we need to be aware that it's been trained across a large volume of data, but the data may be slightly outdated. And actually, it's one of the common complaints around GitHub Copilot. It's also not your junior programmer. So I know that in industry, everyone keeps talking about AI, about AI assistants, and how they are going to revolutionize how we build software. And probably it's going to happen in the future, but we are not there just yet. So if you work with if you are a senior programmer and you work with junior programmer, you may expect that that programmer has a level of creative thinking or some troubleshooting capabilities. This is not provided by GitHub Copilot at this point. It can assist you with your coding. It can try to fix some issues, but it's in certain areas, it's not great at doing that. So we need to remember to distinguish. This is just a tool. And finally, and I think especially in my experience, this is an important argument. This is not a magic wand. So in many companies, leadership expects that AI is going to bring efficiencies, and this is valid expectation, but that actually leads to unrealistic plans and strategies. So they actually want to reduce headcount. They want to expect a software being built much quicker. They want to actually, and that leads to increased pressure on software developers. So I think this is a problem, and whoever is responsible for adoption of AI assistants, they actually need to make sure that leadership understand this doesn't really change how software is being built. It most likely it can improve software, or it can make software developers' life easier, but we can't expect that software developers are going to build applications 5 times as quickly. This is not working this way, at least not from my experience, from our investigation, from our adoption, and I don't expect that is happening anywhere else. So that question that is looming everywhere: will AI replace developers? So as I said, I'm not AI expert, so I can't speak about future. But based on that large volume of developers I've been working with, I can definitely say that no, at this point, AI assistants, they cannot replace software developers. We noticed that the number of junior positions is actually going slightly down because of AI adoption. So anyone who finished bootcamp, they may struggle to find a new position. Also, the current situation in the industry does not help. But we noticed that even in our enterprise, the adoption of GitHub Copilot did impact junior positions, but this is not a huge impact, and in a grand scale of things, we don't really see any impact to actual developer structure in our enterprise. And yes, Robert, you are right. Yesterday's juniors are tomorrow's seniors. And I personally expect that is going to be a challenge, because if companies stop hiring juniors, how are we going to train them to be seniors? So maybe in the future, seniors are going to be a limited resource. That is going to be definitely interesting. So what are the key features and capabilities of GitHub Copilot? GitHub Copilot serves as an AI pair programming feature. So as you carry on building your software and you have Copilot enabled in your IDE, it analyzes your code and it tries to actually give you suggestions. So it tries to understand what you're trying to achieve, and it gives you suggestion that maybe you should add this code, maybe you can add these kind of tests, maybe you should fix this and this. So it's basically similar to pair programming. Again, it misses that troubleshooting capabilities or creative thinking, but if you learn how to utilize it effectively, it can definitely simplify some of the mundane tasks that you are doing. What is great about GitHub Copilot is that it understands context. So if you use ChatGPT, You can paste your code into ChatGPT and ask it to analyze it. This is great, but what GitHub Copilot goes a bit further, and it actually analyzes the context of your workspace. So the way it works is that the closer the context is to your cursor, the more relevant GitHub Copilot finds it. But if you have like a different classes in different files, and you ask actually to put references to those classes, it understands that because it understands the context of your application. But there are certain limits. So if we deal with like a large monolithic legacy applications, that context analysis is not working that great. So the context is great, but to a certain extent, from my experience. You can also converse in natural language. So last year, GitHub released a new feature which is called GitHub Copilot Chat, and you can use that to converse with GitHub Copilot in a natural language. It doesn't really bring the same capabilities as ChatGPT because it is focused solely on software development. So if you try to ask some esoteric questions about sense of life, it's probably not going to help you. But if you try to actually solve some problems about software development, you can actually start that conversation with Copilot. And finally, it supports many languages. So the way it works is that the model was trained on public repositories. So the more public repositories we have for a given language, the better support Copilot offers. So we know from experience that Java, PHP, Python, the support is decent. So users don't really complain about weird things that GitHub Copilot provides. But when it comes to a little bit niche solutions, niche languages like maybe Haskell, Golang, Elixir, the performance tends to vary. So regardless of the language you use, I think it's worth giving a try, but we need to remember that the support differs. So that was the basic. So hopefully that actually helped you with understanding what GitHub Copilot is about. But what about my experience from adopting GitHub Copilot? Let's start with some numbers. So I was tasked to adopt GitHub Copilot for a large Fortune 100 company. We are actually under NDA, so we can't share the name of this company, but this is a large company in a building a heavy machinery tractors in a manufacturing industry. We have around 11,000 developers at the moment. It's really hard to estimate the exact number because there is a lot of acquisitions going on, there are a lot of restructure. We have very independent groups. So the estimation is 11,000, but no one really knows. Up until now, we managed to allocate 400 GitHub Copilot licenses. So we have 400 people working with Copilot licenses. So this is still a work in progress, and our long-term goal is to make sure that as many developers use it as possible. There are certain implications involved because we recommend that you need to use GitHub in order to be able to use GitHub Copilot, because from our experience, that tends to be the most beneficial. So we're actually trying to move people to GitHub fast. This is our strategy. That's why we have only 400. Hopefully, we will reach that 11,000. And currently, over 1,000 users is approved. So they are actually waiting in the backlog to get those licenses. So what we wanted to achieve through that adoption, what was our key goal? We just wanted to make sure that the adoption is effective. So people actually gain benefits from this tool. So I am part of DevOps Engineering Center of Excellence for that company. We are a small team, but we are responsible for providing variety of automation tools to software developers, and we just want to understand if what we provide is effective, because then it's hard to actually revert when we roll a certain tool across the entire enterprise. It's actually hard to go back. So that investigation needs to be careful. Our baseline for this adoption was a multitude of articles and investigations. So there is like a quote from a study made by Accenture in collaboration with GitHub, and apparently the outcome of the study was that 90% of developers found their job more fulfilling, and this 95% said that they enjoyed coding more with GitHub Copilot. So these numbers are definitely impressive, but as we know, numbers that are presented are quite often do not align with reality. So we actually wanted to perform this investigation internally. So how we approach that investigation? So how we measure the impact. Measuring developer performance is not easy by definition. So there's been so many researches done in this regard, and oh, we try to approach that using different channels, so actually get as comprehensive outcome as possible. So our first approach, a study group. We took volunteers that were interested to help us for long-term benchmarks. We asked them, can you please measure how long it takes to generate documentation, unit tests, functions, or anything they find relevant. And then we ask them to measure that regularly prior to Copilot adoption and after Copilot adoption. The second approach was extraction of metrics through GitHub API. So again, we're not saying that number of commits or number of pull requests is a definite factor that indicates whether developers are more performant or less performant, but we wanted to actually extract some patterns and understand how GitHub Copilot adoption affects those patterns in number of pull requests, the cycle time of pull requests. Also, we start extracting number of prompts accepted by developers, prompts provided by GitHub Copilot. This can be done only on the enterprise level on GitHub, but it also can give us a valuable information. And finally, a control group, we just wanted to meet a certain group of people in person. We split them into two units. One unit was tasked to do certain actions without Copilot, and the second group was tasked to do the same actions with Copilot, and we compared those numbers. So we try to actually take different approaches just to make sure that our approach is as comprehensive as possible to be able to determine accurately if Copilot is beneficial to our enterprise. So what was the outcome? Let's start. I'm going to share like high-level outcome, which I find the most beneficial and interesting for the further adoption. So what are the good things? There is a definite positive factor in reducing cognitive load. So nearly all of our software developers, they said that once they learn how to use it, creating documentation, tests, functions, queries is definitely much easier. And actually this reduces their cognitive load, and they can focus on actually building a software rather than focusing on those nitty-gritty details. What is also good about Copilot is it helps to reduce scanning Stack Overflow. So I think every software developer uses Stack Overflow or maybe similar platforms to actually find solutions. There is a lot of copy paste going on. A good thing about GitHub Copilot is that our developers, they actually realize that they don't need Stack Overflow that often anymore. So GitHub Copilot basically replaces Stack Overflow. And so if they want to try a new language, new solution, they instead of just looking that up on Stack Overflow, they ask GitHub Copilot. If they're trying to actually come up with some algorithm that they don't really know how to approach, then they use GitHub Copilot. That's great. But there are a couple of bad outcomes that we got from our research. First thing is it's very divisive. This is either love or hate relationship. So software developers, they are very opinionated. I know, but when it comes to AI assistants, like there is a group that says it's useless. I hate it. It doesn't help anything. And I spend more time talking to GitHub Copilot, and I could spend the same time writing the code. And those are valid arguments, but there are also people that actually love it, and they say that that completely transform how they work with it. So we actually still trying to change that divisive approach just to find that balance. Nothing is black or white. Also, architectural decisions are very confusing. So people try to use GitHub Copilot for different purposes. They still try, but when it comes to architectural decisions, like trying to actually build something bigger, GitHub Copilot really struggles. The limited context it is working on, and the data it's been trying out, it doesn't really provide that capability to come up with architectural decisions. So we normally recommend do not use it for any big picture work. It should be focused on the limited aspects. A big problem, a big bottleneck as well is complicated legal aspect around our IP protection. So there's been a lot of discussion with legal team, and we still have many use cases that are forbidden for AI assistants, like anything public facing, anything that is being embedded into heavy machinery. Copilot cannot be used for these use cases. And finally, reliability issues. There are still some issues here and there that we actually report to GitHub, and they are actively working on that, but they still occur. So the outcome of that investigation was that, of our internal investigation, is that 77% people reported significant positive impact on their performance, and 71% reported that they feel more fulfilled and less frustrated using GitHub Copilot. And also, finally, 94% reported that they intend to continue on using GitHub Copilot, which I think is great metric. It doesn't align to what Accenture and GitHub provided to us at the beginning of this investigation, but I think these numbers are still great, and they give us an insight that GitHub Copilot can really provide a great capability. So I'm cautious of time, so what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to share a very quick demo with you, just to show you the high-level capabilities of what GitHub Copilot can do. So let me share another screen. I'm going to share my Visual Studio Code with you. And this is we start with a blank slate. What I'm going to show you that how it can create boilerplate, how it can change certain functions. So what I tend to recommend using at first is a GitHub Copilot chat. So it can GitHub Copilot can integrate with multiple IDEs, and normally GitHub Copilot chat is available as another extension. So let me quickly show you how I create a new application. So first we need to define a context, which is going to be our workspace. And then I indicate, all right, I want to create something new. And then let's say scaffold a new Python application with fast API library for the user data management. An interesting thing is that the same prompt at different circumstances is going to yield different results. So I don't really know what it's going to create right now, but let me quickly. And what I'm creating right now is a bit against our recommendations, because you need to be specific, very specific and detailed in order for GitHub Copilot to provide you a good outcome. But this is supposed to be a very quick demo. So you can see structure. We have structure. We recommend a structure. We have a reasonable folder structure. So there's API, models, services, tests. That looks great. And let's click Create Workspace. And now we need to select a parent folder, and you can see that it's creating a new files. And that's very quick. So it takes several seconds to create every file required. And in a second, we should be moved to another screen. Perfect. Our workspace was created. We have the boilerplate in place. So we have requirements. We have the folder structure. This is great. So we have a class user in here, but it feels like we are missing a user address. So we need to be able to manage user and user addresses as well. So let's use workspace as a context, and let's say create another another class for user address and associated with user. Let's see what he comes up with. I'm not sure myself, so this is always interesting. It also learns as you go. It learns from your input, so the prompts and your outcomes do differ. So you can see that actually it's such as creating another class in user. This is great. So we need to copy that because this is a bit confusing. You can't copy the entire path. You actually need to be careful about what you are copying, because that can actually muddle the picture. So we have user class, great. Then it actually asks to create another property for address to associated address. This is great. Okay, and we have another class. This is very, very simple. Let me quickly go to our services, our functions for services. What I'm really missing here is that we don't have any documentation. So what we can do is we can click Control-I, and you actually open Copilot prompt input, and you can just type doc, and that is actually going to come up with suggestions for documentation. And that's a generated documentation for our functions, for our class, basically all of it. Sometimes it works for all of those. Sometimes you actually need to select individual functions. So it's not entirely consistent, but you can work around those shortcomings. And finally, let me select this function. And I know that we already have a test created, but I just want to show you that you can select this function and just select test. And if you're not happy about the outcome, you can actually elaborate on what you're trying to do. But just test prompt is actually going to provide you with a simple unit test. So you can see that it's actually suggesting that it is going to create a new test user service PY, and within that file, you are going to have a unit test. So yes, I want to create that, and we can see that this was created. So this is very brief. This is very high level, that you can see that you can actually streamline your work. You can quickly create new functions. You can quickly expand your application, create the documentation. So there's a lot of capabilities. So I'm going back to my slide deck. I would like to share some interesting final tips and tricks on what are the best practices in utilizing GitHub Copilot. All right. So what are our recommendations that we actually provide to our teams? First, provide clear context. So the more context you provide, the better Copilot can see. So it will try to analyze the existing context of your workspace. But on top of that, you actually need to write the context of what you are trying to do. What's the background of your investigation? What's the background of your changes? And what's the expected outcome? The more context you provide, the better Copilot can help you with troubleshooting the solution or resolving that task you are faced with. Iterate. So do not expect that Copilot is going to provide you with great outcomes straight away. Copilot can give you the first suggestion, and if you are not happy about it, provide it with some corrections. So what you don't like about these suggestions, how it can be changed, what you really expect from Copilot to provide you. So as you iterate, you will notice that GitHub Copilot is actually getting better. So it will actually, during that iteration process, you will see that those outcomes are actually being better. And in the long run, you will also notice that GitHub Copilot is actually becoming more clever as you start working with it. Be also specific. So you need to define what libraries you want to use, what languages you want to use. You just need to be very specific in order to enable GitHub Copilot to provide you with great solutions. So if you want to introduce new library, you can provide some details about which version of that library, what is supposed to achieve, where it's supposed to be located, things like that. You just basically work with Copilot and learn what it can do, and by doing that you can actually understand how much the level of detail is required in order to achieve expected outcome. And finally, use with caution. So as I said, GitHub Copilot is no magic. This is just a tool, another tool in our toolkit. So if you learn to work around its shortcomings, it can really be a valuable tool because it can actually reduce that load for you. It can really create a complex queries. It can really drill into complicated data sets, so it can do a lot. But we need to remember that this is just a tool and it's flawed in many areas. So from my point of view, it's worth using GitHub Copilot, but again, use it with caution and always check what it generates. So whatever functions you get, even if at the high level it looks sensible, you need to check it yourself. There needs to be a human involved into building software. So recap, just a quick recap, it's unlikely that AI assistants are going away. So the industry is focused on expanding AI, so AI assistants are going to stay with us. So my recommendation is, and I carry on saying that to our developers, just learn to use it and keep up with industry. Probably AI assistants are going to get better, so probably it's worth to be already on that. It's worth to start using that. At this moment, use it for mundane, repetitive tasks. Try to make your life easier, focus on what you really enjoy. And you can also use that for large data sets, complex functions. Just learn where you can use that and don't get frustrated if it doesn't work. If you feel like certain areas just don't work for your language, just leave it behind and just focus on where it really brings benefits. And finally, take caution when you work with GitHub Copilot and focus on how you can make your work easier. And just quickly, GitHub carries on working on a lot of improvements. So GitHub, it was just announced, GitHub Copilot Workspace in April is going to the idea is going to completely redefine how we work with software development. So there's going to be another abstraction layer, and we are going to actually work from the very beginning of the project definition. It's actually going to be more based on the natural language rather than just drilling into software, so in the code base. So I think it's going to be interesting. There are also custom models, so enterprises can fine-tune those models to actually follow naming conventions, good practices, or anything that is relevant. So we can make sure that GitHub Copilot doesn't provide suggestions that do not align with our principles. And there is also GitHub Copilot Marketplace. It's actually going to provide a capability to extend GitHub Copilot by additional features. So Docker, for instance, can build an extension that can be utilized under GitHub Copilot umbrella. So I think that Marketplace is going to bring a lot of capabilities as well. So there's a lot going on. So I think it's definitely worth watching out for any updates. So thank you so much. I know that we were very short on time, so this is like very quick, very to the point presentation. I just wanted to share my experience from adopting GitHub Copilot, and just wanted to work on some misconceptions here and highlight that GitHub Copilot is great, but this is just a tool. So I keep saying it's worth giving a try. If you feel like you don't like it, that is fine. Just maybe come back later. But my recommendation is try to use it for certain limited use cases. I'm sure you are going to find value.
Thank you so much, Matt. Very, very well done. Concise information. You got out lots. I know it's hard in that period of time, but really well done. We do have a lot of comments and questions coming through. So if I may, I will jump right in for you. Up first, Dennis is wondering which IDEs are currently supported, and how does having the Copilot enabled impact the privacy of our code? So kind of two separate things there. It's on the screen here for you too.
This is a great question. So when it comes to IDEs, there are a couple of IDEs supported. So there is a JetBrains, NeoVim, Visual Studio Code, and I think those four are supported at the moment. There is also GitHub Codespaces where you can use GitHub Copilot. You can also use in many other places. So you can actually use in CLI. So you can actually download a GitHub CLI extension. You can also install application on your mobile and use Copilot on your mobile, which is quite cool. So they're actually expanding where GitHub Copilot can be used. And regarding privacy, so this is actually an interesting question, and we're actually having a lot of difficulties when it comes to privacy and that legal aspect. So even our legal team, we have a large legal team, and they can't provide answers to certain challenges. So as I already said, we have a list of non-permissible activities where GitHub Copilot cannot be used, but there are some gray areas that we don't really know if we should use it or we should not. We actually, in our case, there was actually a change in our NDA between my company and GitHub, and that was actually to make sure that our data is not going to be used anywhere to train the model. So that is actually guaranteed. But our also challenge is that we don't really know what kind of data GitHub Copilot provides. So it may occur that actually it provides a data from a public repository that is under very restrictive license. And in that case, if we use that, it may occur that we are non-compliant with that license, and then we will need to make our code, for instance, public if this is a restricted GPL license. So there are many challenges that I think this is all still need to be discussed in the AI community.
Wonderful. And of course, we've got channels in Slack where we can start some of these discussions too. If people want to go in the machine learning AI channel and start brainstorming on this with the bigger group, I'm sure that's kind of a fun one to dig into. Okay, Matt, we've got some other questions here. Is there any way to fine tune Copilot with your internal modules, APIs, and libraries?
So I mentioned that there's going to be a GitHub models made available, so you can actually use GitHub models to actually fine tune what kind of recommendations GitHub Copilot is going to provide. So you can feed GitHub Copilot with your naming conventions, how you want to link your applications, all kinds of stuff. So that is possible. That is going to be possible, but it's going to be possible only on the enterprise level, so on the enterprise license. So the access is going to be limited. When it comes to individual use cases, I don't think that there is any way to actually fine-tune GitHub Copilot model. Yeah, so it can learn on your prompts. So what is happening behind the scenes is that if it starts working with you on your context and you actually carry on feeding Copilot with your prompts, it actually learns continuously based on that. So there is fine-tuning going on behind the scenes, but we don't really have impact on that.
Wonderful. This is, I mean, tricky still, it sounds like, but thanks for giving us all these answers that you have here. We do have 2 more questions in the chat, but we are out of time. So we will grab those. We'll share them in the channel afterwards, allow everyone that chance to kind of have a bigger discussion around it. And hopefully, Matt, it's somewhere you can jump in as well, but we'll share everything after today. Thank you so much for being here with us at the conference.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.